Hey, welcome to the Inspiring Possibilities podcast. It's Julian, and today I have my brother from another mother, but the same spirit and same direction, Matt Wilson. Matt, welcome.
Julian, it's so glad to be here. I know we've been dying to do this. So many connections where you and I are going through experiences, and then our wives are showing up the same way in our lives, and I'm really stoked, man. Love seeing the life that you're living, and I'm glad I'm on this journey with you.
Oh, appreciate it. Receive it. I receive it. So, Matt, I don't like to read bios just because I think they can be boring for people, right?
Yep.
And I think like the person can actually say more than the bio, right? So, for those that are just there, be like, okay, that Matt guy look interesting. Tell him just a little bit about you.
Sure. So, grew up in California. And a strong Christian family growing up, good roots. And I was the middle son. I have 5 sisters, so pretty big family growing up. That's my upbringing. And more recently, I've been in the business world. I've been CEO and managing partner of a venture capital firm. Prior to that, I grew a business from 0 revenue to 120 million in revenue, got a $1 billion valuation. That was a consumer fintech called Happy Money, helping people get out of credit card debt, build up their savings, build wealth. That was the mission that we were building there. Before that, I was in private equity. So I've done a lot of stuff in the investing space, operating, building companies, have a Harvard MBA, and started my career actually though as an intelligence officer in the US Navy. So was dealing with the nation's secrets and then made that transition to the business world.
Yo, secrets. Some secrets.
I do know some secrets. You know when they declassified that UFO footage in 2020? Do you remember that? So I was there when they recorded that.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is not a UFO podcast, so let's get back to...
I might just get the clip just to get some clicks.
So I've been married for almost 20 years to Natalie Flowers. I've got 2 boys, ages 10 and 12. Trained jujitsu, trained martial arts, working on my fitness. And now I'm in this place where I am a coach, and I coach CEOs and business leaders to live boldly. And really what that means is I help them live their best life, making them come alive across every dimension so that the way they show up in the world is totally different. But the only way I was able to figure that out is I had to do it myself. And so that's been part of my transformation journey really over the last year. Going to the next level. But that's a quick background on me. Yeah. I now live in Orange County, California, after spending 2.5 years in Nashville, Tennessee, which was a beautiful place. But Orange County is home for us, and we love it.
That is awesome. So, for those that don't know, some of the parallel inside of like Matt's life and my life in the recent month. So we're not talking about like years, talking about like very recent month when whenever you start going the same directions as others, like there's a way that life just starts to bring people together and they're moving the same direction. You know, some of my frames, some of my rules, laws, regulation, and belief with God is that God bring the right people at the right time in your life. It's your job to grow those relationships. and I strongly believe in that. So for me, whenever I have a nudge or a pull, I'm like, okay, cool. That's one of my guy. I'm going to grow the relationship. I'm going to do what I need to do on my side. I'm not going to confuse my role with God's role. He brought the people, my job to build a relationship. So one of the things that happened in my life is in November, my wife decided to like, hey, we need to move house. And then like, we've only been there for probably 2 years and we spent a lot of money, but built a pool. I redid the garage. It was like my space. It was painted. It had the lights. It had the insulation. It had it all, right? Overlooking the pool. Perfect lighting. Everything got changed in the house. And then she's like, we got to move. And I'm like, okay, all right, we're gonna move, but first we list we list the house, then we sell the house, then we move. And she's like, we list the house, we move, and then we're gonna sell the house. And everything in me was just like, hell no, we can't do that. Like that's just the dumbest thing. That's called suicide. And I have 6 kids. I don't want to die. Like that just does not work. But also understood that God has a way to speak through your wife so that you can move. And it's still a place of obedience for you as the man of the house to do it. And so we did. And it took about 2 months or so because we sold the house. We signed end of December, but we actually closed February 7th. But during that moment of doing it, it was just like bleeding money, right? Matt is like experiencing a little bit of that now, which is like, you have the house that you're paying off, the debt inside of that house, you have the double electricity, the double water, the double everything is just, oof, it's big. But eventually it happened, and that was a big pivot. So Matt, share the parallel for you right now.
Yeah. So this is crazy because I think I did a live and I was telling about my story, and then you called me up and were sending me like audio notes of like, hey, this is so. The backstory there is when we moved to Nashville, Tennessee in the fall of 21. We bought a house. There wasn't much available, but there was a new house, and it was good, but it wasn't perfect. So we bought that. Interest rates were super low and it just made sense. Boom. Now we have a place to live. And then while we're living there, my wife was like, this is not really where I want to live long term. If we're going to be here while the kids finish high school, and mind you, they're 10 and 12 now, so at the time they were a couple years younger, like we should build the house that we want to live in. And so I was like, all right, babe, like, and the market was, pretty dynamic. So it's like, okay, let's build a house. So we begin that process. And for those of you who are thinking about building a house, right? Julian, I don't know if you've ever built a house or not.
No, but
yeah, that's one time for us. it's like even working with a great builder, it's just so many details. And if it's not your thing, it's a lot of work and a lot of follow up and making sure. And you're not even, getting blueprints. You're like, I don't know what the blueprints look like. Can you give me a 3D rendering or something? What are all these computer programs for? Right? My wife was like, this looks like lines on paper. So we build our dream house in Franklin, Tennessee, and then we move into it in September. We're sitting here, it's May, so not even a year ago. Move into it September, and it was pretty dialed. My wife had helped build and customize a lot of the rooms in the house, really the whole design. From the exterior. She doesn't like the points. Everything in Tennessee is kind of pointy because of the rain. And they won't let you do flat roofs because of the water. But she made this asymmetric design. We had all these angles to it. It was super sick. It was kind of backed up against the hill, perched on top. It was in the neighborhood called Lookaway Farms. And so you could see off into the distance from the upstairs. 20-foot high ceilings, just beautiful. She had her dad come in and do some trim work walls where it was like black with black trim patterns. I mean, it was really cool. So that's the house. And then something else that was really special, because we were building it, we went in when it was just framed up and we were writing scripture verses and front quotes like on the walls of the house. Like literally it was built into the studs, where like the heart and the spiritual impact that we wanted to emanate out from this house. Well, fast forward, earlier this year, it was like, you know what? God's calling us back to California. Like, I was beginning to feel the rumblings in my soul to really build a coaching business. A lot of my network and a lot of the people that I knew were out here. I was flying out to Orange County once a month for training. So I was spending, not quite a week, but a chunk of time every month just coming out. And I was like, you know what? I didn't want to build a business that would take me away from my family.
Yeah.
My wife certainly didn't want that. She's like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're leaving. You're having fun at the beach. Reading all day. But still, like, the impression is like, I'm going. And then I was beginning to talk to CEOs in California that were going to become my clients. And so she's like, oh, that's going to be more time, more travel. Yep. Because, well, you can do everything virtually. You can also do certain things when you're out on a hike or walking along the beach or going into their office and sitting down with them that you can't just replicate as easily virtually, especially like the depth that we coach to. Yeah. So then she's like, okay, come to an agreement. Like, babe, totally get it. House is just a house, right? So let's sell the house. We'll move. She's like, great. And then she comes back to me later. She's like, okay, so I found the house that we're gonna rent, and I told them when we're gonna start. And I was like, woo, time out. Wait. So we're in agreement that what we last said was we're gonna sell the house and move to California. She's like, I built this dream house. And I was talking to God, and he said that he was going to give me the place to go so I could get excited about the house that I was going to be moving to. And I'm thinking in my mind, it's like, we could find something. We could Airbnb a little bit if we needed to, just pack light, explore. And she's like, nope, here's the house. Here's the picture of it. She's like, I called the realtor, and she said that it was already rented someone else was ahead of us. And she said, I told the realtor, oh, call me back when it becomes available because God told me that's my house.
Yeah.
And this realtor was like, okay, a little forward here, but I like you, but we already said someone else could have it. I think it's in process. We get a call back later that night. It's like, okay, well, the other prospective tenant fell out. So if you're interested, when can you move in? Now this was, let's say probably like February timeframe, and maybe like late Feb. And my wife was like, she was about to say, we haven't even listed our house yet.
Yeah.
That's what she was about to say. And instead she said, April 15th. Okay. So then she comes to me and she's like, hey, here's the conversation I just had. And I was like, wait, you already picked a date. You have the house. I'm like, we haven't sold the house. And she's like, I wish you would hear from God like I do. I was like, babe,
right.
You know I hear from God. I've been getting divine downloads. I'm living that now.
Yeah.
That was something she's done since she was 5. And I learned that at 44. But she's been living that way. I was like, babe, I believe he told you. I didn't hear it. So we're going to have to go on your faith here. Because I trust you, I love you. And if you're telling me you heard it, I'll get behind that. But I can't pretend like I heard it directly. Because that wouldn't be right either. Right? It'd be like, so it's like, okay, well, fine. That's the date. We're moving. I'm like,
that's the date.
So then we're thinking, God's going to sell the house before we go. Because he gave the date. He knows we have a house. I mean, easy. If he can give a date, he can sell a house. That's not very hard.
No, right.
So fast forward.
I know.
We move, and we still haven't sold the house. But the crazy thing was, at first, so she's checking in with me on that. Because the old me would have been typically one a little more financially conservative.
Yeah.
Right? Make the money. I'm the one that takes care of the money. She's just like, you better not die because I don't know how to pay any bills. And I'd probably be in jail because I don't know how to pay taxes. And I probably wouldn't want to. And so, it's like,
moving over the land. Off the grid.
Your department. I'm like, okay, well, if it's my department, sometimes you got to help me out, right? You don't have to do it, but maybe you need to not spend or something, or work with me when we're navigating through things. And so, the time's approaching, but the way God was opening doors for me in conversations I was having with CEOs and where the clients were starting to come through. Meanwhile, I was still full-time as managing partner of the venture firm, planning to quit my job. So I'm quitting my job, dropping my income on paper, the big steady income from that, making a move, which is expensive, after having purchased the house and then just furnished it. So it's one thing to buy a house.
Yeah.
And then this furnishing thing is like, oh wait, I thought nope, not done. Let's fill it up. Okay. And then it's like, all right, we're good for a little while. Let the financials recover. Nope. Now we're going to move.
Yeah.
So in the backdrop of all of that though, I had such a peace about it. And in fact, she was feeling a little more anxious, a little more wrestling with God.
Yeah, it became the opposite now.
Hey, you told me, that's believing with me, and you told me, so I called the date and we're going, would be great. And then every single time someone, whether it be a showing or some prospective buyer, it's like, oh, maybe it's the one. Maybe it's the one, right? I have a good feeling about this. Maybe it's the one, right? And so far, none of those were the right one, at least not yet.
Yeah.
And so we moved, but here's the crazy thing. God had ordained that timing in a way that was so perfect that we could not have predicted it or known about the timing situation. And that's the part where we've hit the ground running. We were able to step into some people's lives right away. Julien, I mean, is it okay if I keep talking, just tell you the story, or I don't know if break this up or whatever, but
tell the story, go.
Dude, okay.
Because I think some people, whenever they hear that, here's my story, and they can, I have 6 kids, so I'm making moves like that, and it can seem stupid, ridiculous, how, because you become so unstable, It's almost like you are making the decision to become unstable, just like you quit a job, you move, like you're putting yourself in that situation of just like stability
Right.
without a promise of anything, right? And I think being able to continue the story just allows people to know, like, hey, here's my proof. Here's Matt's journey, and what happened when he said yes, without knowing what anything else was going to be. So that piece.
Absolutely. So I'm going through all this, and again, normally I'd be like, well, maybe I'll just stay at the job longer. That way I've got the stability. Or, maybe we need to like not make the move, right? We'll get up to it, and then it's like, maybe pull the plug and be like, hey, we can't rent it. Like, stop the move. House hasn't sold yet, right? But we stepped out in faith, and I did that. And I had basically quit and dropped my income down on April 1st. So April 1st was when I was no longer full-time at the venture firm. So we move on April 15th, right? So like drop the income, make the move, and moving costs money.
Yes, it does. It's me moving, like you moving
so like cash is like, right? This whole number. But while we were flying in the air, someone who's very close to me got some news that rocked their world. Really bad news. And I was the person they called the next morning, my very first morning in California. Like the worst news that a guy could probably get in their life kind of news. And I was here. And God brought me on a specific date to move over halfway across the country to be there to walk with this man.
Yeah. Can't script it.
I knew within 12 hours of being here, I was like, okay, and the situation that had been going on in his life didn't happen that weekend. He just became aware of it. And it was the news of it. So there's the timing thing was just, and the other thing is, a year ago, I would not have been equipped or able to effectively help him. I could have been a friend. I could have been like, dude, sorry, love you, pray for you. Yeah, get some help, something like that. Yeah. Instead, because of the walk that I'm having right now with God, I was able to step into that situation, lean in and be like, God brought me here to walk with you on the beach to process through this right now. And it's like, and strangely, I am like deeply saddened by what happened to you. It made me cry. Right. Which is also a new thing for me, the ability to actually feel and cry at that level.
Hey, can we pause on this one? Oh, man. Okay. Because prior to pre-show, we kind of talked about that a little bit, right? And I think it's a good place to camp for a second. My wife is huge in that space, like the space of feeling, right? Where I was very low on that place, right? Because, being an Enneagram 3 achiever, like I just want to move. Yeah. And that created this thing, I think, kind of like you, because we talked about it, which is like at that point, like your wife doesn't feel safe to be herself, you know? And I remember the first time that my wife told me she didn't feel safe, I got upset. I got a little bit angry because I was just like, the only safety that in my head I could think of is physical safety. And I'm like, I've never touched my wife. I never even brew with my wife. Like I've never been abused, like not getting angry. You know what I mean? With this, and she say emotional safety. And then I felt like a kid, like, what? Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? And it was that place of being able to feel. And so instead of that journey that I've had, like I've had more tears over like conversation, people's feeling that I've ever had. But that also allowed me to be able to get to the place where she felt safe to be herself. And I think many men never get to the place of like feeling, crying, and then just releasing all those energies that are stuck in their body. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Probably for the first 18 years, 19 years of marriage, my wife saw me cry 3 times total One was when she was going into labor with the first, and I was like, sorry, you're not feeling it. She's like, why are you crying?
Yeah.
Like, this hurts.
Right.
I'm like, what hurts to see you in pain? Just, it's like, just this thing, labor taking over the body and the contractions and all of that. And, Julien, you and I both are part of like this warrior training where, we're learning how to really live at a higher level, to expand our capacity as men, to show up in every domain of life and push our current boundaries and attain new levels of understanding and depth. And so as a part of that, you start to realize when you examine your life, what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
And then you start to look at it and be like, you know what? So for instance, my marriage, most people would be like, you have a great marriage. I can tell you guys actually love each other. You want to be around each other. Like,
yeah, you want to be around.
Is that real? We saw you on stage and you're both looking at each other and it looked like you loved each other. But I don't know if that's real because I have no example of that in my life. Like, I'm married, but we're definitely not that way. Everyone I know, like, they kind of just put up with each other, that kind of thing. And so we were like, wow, like, we have a marriage that actually works. We love being with each other. And yet, towards the end of last year, God really challenged me on that because my marriage was so great, and other areas needed more work, I kind of put it into like maintenance mode. A little bit of like, hey, that's great. Like, what else is there to really do?
Yeah.
Great's good. Great's like, we're beating the competition, if you will. It's like,
Better than others.
Like, we're so much better because we actually like each other. And it's like, is that the standard of what an amazing marriage can be?
Yeah, this is the standard. I'm better than you.
You're not just tolerating each other. You actually like each other, love each other, and want to hang out and spend time. And so God asked me to pursue my wife and go all in on marriage. And I realized that there was this weird kind of block I had where if I held myself back, even just a little bit, then there was always this notion of, if something happens to her and I lose her, I won't lose myself because I'll hold a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll protect myself just a little bit. Even though, like, when I first fall in love, right, it's like I throw my heart across the line, right? It's just like, gushing and loving and like, because you got to win the girl, right? So you just got to you got to find the words and the emotions and like all of that. And then over time, you get into a good routine, a good rhythm, but I realized there was another level to go to. And as a part of that, I needed to be able to feel again. And my story on feeling is this. In about the first 7 years of our marriage, I did not show up like the husband I wanted to be. And while I had a very calm and professional demeanor in all areas of my life, in the military, everything I was doing, at home, my wife sometimes wouldn't know the man that was coming through the door. And I would get angry. And she didn't know what would trigger me or what wouldn't. And I think it was there because I could let my guard down. And then when you any sort of like disrespect or whatever, or kind of like, hey, this or that, this isn't enough or whatever. It would just like, and I would just get angry. And I would just, explode and I might like yell or just like, or like, throw the remote or kick a box or something like that. And she would just be like, hey, who is this? And so it got so bad, and I didn't remember it being so bad, but for her it was so bad. So I'm just like, hey, I got a little angry. But again, but not to the point of being like physically abusive and stuff, but just like she was still afraid.
Yeah.
That thing you're talking about. And so she was going to divorce me. And she had divorce papers. She stayed with a friend for a few days. And that friend said to her, hey, I think you need before you meet with him, you should get a pregnancy test done. Okay. So my wife goes to get a pregnancy test done. Turns out she's pregnant. And God told her on her way to meet me that you just tell him the woman that you're hurting is carrying your child and he will never hurt you again. So she comes and meets me. I remember where we are to this day. We're like by the marina. We're in Hawaii. It's where we were living at the time. And she's like, hey, just want to let you know, like, I'm carrying your child. And the way she describes it, it was like this, like the spirit of anger just kind of just like drained out of me and then disappeared. Mm-hmm. And then for the next 13 years, it was like, she's like, hey, it was like you almost went Zen. Like I could not, like anger like was gone. There was no anger. It was just like calm, always calm. I could be in the worst business situations, chaos everywhere. And I was just like unruffled. But it was weird because I also couldn't really achieve many peaks of excitement either. Like, isn't this the best meal ever? And I'd be like, yeah, it's good. She's like, oh, what? Like, you're no fun. Like, you're not able to like express yourself up and down.
You have no heartbeat. Like, you just, almost like flatline.
Yeah. And so in like kind of digging down into that well again and finding like, hey, pursuing her and really feeling again, it began to unlock stuff for us. This was like December and January of this year. And then what began to happen is because of that, initially that was a little bit unsettling for her too. Because I was being like more open and more vulnerable. And it turned out she had also built some walls because she never knew if Angry Matt was going to come back, even though it had been 13 years. So in January, she said something and it sparked something in me a little bit. And she saw like my voice rise a little bit. And she was like, uh-oh, like danger, 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 right? And so she goes into like full defense mode, like, she's like, hold on, if this warrior thing is bringing up those emotions and stuff, like, we're not going back there. There is no way. Like, this is not happening. And I was like, babe, I'm fighting to feel again, but I'm not fighting you. I'm looking just to reconnect. And here's the beautiful thing about it. God took that and gave me the ability to feel his presence, and it's turned into like a peace and a love and an overflow that instead of turning to anger has more turned to tears. Tears of joy, of just like what he's doing in me and what he did in my wife and what he did in my boys. Because of all that, I can feel. And that gives me a different ability to, one, connect with God, connect with my loved ones, but also the men I'm called to coach and who I'm to be in their lives. So when I get out here and I get the text from this guy within 12 hours of being here, I cried getting the text. That never would happen. Never. I would have been calculating. Yeah. In control, right? And so when he called me as he was coming over to meet me, I was like, hey, dude, God brought me here for you. Okay? Of course, he's driving. He starts bawling. Hadn't let himself cry yet. Now he's crying on the way over to see me. And I'm like, that's not a good thing on Southern California freeways. I'm like, hold on, buddy. I'll wait till you get here. I love you. I'll see you when you get here. And so, Julien, like that's just an inkling of what this feeling thing has meant for me. But I'll turn it back over to you. I'd love to hear more about like your perspective on that and your wife being all about that, just how that lands.
Yeah, I think what you said, and the reason I wanted to, to continue to the story is because I think people connect with the story, because it is tangible. I think too often inside of coaching or inside of I don't want to say therapy. Inside of that world, there's nothing tangible. Like it is like concepts, but it's like unlived. You know what I mean? Versus really this thing, when I explain to people, I'm like, trust me on this one. Like I've lived it. Other men are living it, have lived it. When you can feel, you can heal. Because there's many emotions that you've like not allowed yourself to let go, I explain kind of like the train station. You are the train station. There's many trains. You're not inside of the train. You're not a passenger. You're just a train station. So that means that if there's anger, pass. If there's joy, pass. Like, but you're welcoming and noticing things passing. You can't just be like, oh, I'm about to be angry. No, I can't. right? Like, I can't be angry again because this, I'm back to this angry person. And it's like, then if you can't be angry, then you can't be happy. Like, it just doesn't, like, it is one channel where everything goes. If you block it, then I'm blocking everything else. I'm blocking joy, I'm blocking peace, I'm blocking enlightenment. Like, I'm just blocking all higher level vibration of feelings because I'm so afraid of those low vibration one of like sadness, guilt, shame that a lot of men feel.
Yeah.
Right? Because when I was able to heal me, she felt safe to heal herself. When both of us were able to get there, then it created a space where our kids, you know, I shared that with you before, just like two of our older ones, like decide to, like, they want to get baptized. Like, not, we, you know, we pray and all that kind of stuff, but like, we don't go and push, like, you should, have you considered, you know what I mean? Like, there's soft, like, pressure then that, you know, the Christian families have on their kids, like the soft pressure of like, you should want to be baptized, you should be baptized, you should be baptized. And they're like, okay, cool, I'm going to do it, you know? But it's not out of like a pull, a call, or, you know, anything like that. For us, it's like later, the two older ones, like, just came and say, hey, I just want to know Christ. I just want to be baptized. And when my daughter did that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, like, I literally had tears. And I told my wife why. I was just like, because I've had this thought that, like, if we, both of us, can be at a high level, heal together, then they can be free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're having the second one. And when she was gone, I even showed her, like, my 5-year-old sent me a drawing. He's just like, this is you. And it's just like, this me. And then it's like, Jesus, you know, and it's just like, you know, and he's just like, he did it. And it's just like, asking, like, why did you put Jesus? You know, he's just like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't know. It just felt right. Because he asked me, like, how do you spell Jesus? He's like, how do you spell Jesus? And I was like, why? He's like, because I want to put Jesus right here next to you. And I was just like confused, you know? But I was just like, there's so many things in life that you cannot script.
Yeah.
But there's this work that we do inside of men that for a lot of them, you know, have been hurt whenever they shared. At some moment in their life, there's been a moment where they've opened up and shared how they felt, and it backfired. Either by other men, you know, or women, that they're guarded.
Right.
Like, they just are guarded. And for some of them, it's not even them. It's like they're absorbed it from their dad. The dad absorbed from their dad. And so you have this generational, you know, thing that they're this encoded in their DNA that they don't even know why they're always angry.
Yeah.
Why they don't trust anybody.
Totally.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's this place. Like, me, I was able to get to the place where I understood. Like, when I was younger, black people told me I'm white. White people told me I'm black. And then I just felt a sense of, like, not belonging. Not a sense of bridge. A sense of just, I don't belong. Right? And it made jokes. Hey, if everybody go back to where they're from, black people go to Africa, white people go to Europe, but you guys, mixed kid, like, you go to the ocean. And although it was a joke for me, somehow, like, I internalized as a young kid. And so what I did is just, like, because I felt so inferior, like, shadow side of it, I'm just going to just fucking act so superior than anybody else, right? And I'm not going to allow myself to feel like how you want me to feel, which is less than, not enough. Like, I'm not, but I'm overcompensating, right? And that can be great instead of like sports, because the chip on the shoulder, right? Which I always tell people, like, Michael Jordan was great, but MJ was not healed. Still, I think not healed. I think when Kobe died, he got displaced because he still referenced this guy that when he was cut, and this guy took his spot because it made him feel like he was not enough. And so now I'm more than anybody, and I'm creating stories. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I understood this, and I realized that is not true. And most men that I saw felt like this. If I were to look at you before, I would have been like, oh, if I'm to fight Matt, like, what's going to happen? Like, how can I beat Matt? Matt is my competition. Every man is my competition. Therefore, I don't truly want you to know who I am, because we're just like, every man is my competition. And so that's why most of my coaches were women.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I think, like, even my coach, right? Coach that we share, Garrett, he said the same thing for him. It's like most of his coaches before were women, because it was this space of like, one, I didn't like men. Men was my competition. Every single man was my competition, because I didn't want you to know the full me, because it's you versus me. Just like when we play basketball, it's you versus me. Just like in business, it's you versus me. Just like trying to get this girl, it's you versus me. Like for all the resources that I want, it's either you or it's me. And because I'm competitive, like I want to be me. And so I want to beat you. And I got to this place of like, I got to shut down any sign that you can see as a weakness. And therefore, because this is closed, I can't feel, I can't do anything. And when it got opened up, when my dad died, it's just like this level of feelings that start to pour out, you know, and allow me to feel and allow me to step into pockets with men now where I can be there and I can have tears and not feel like I need to, you know, like,
Yeah.
and do this and understand that just like all those men are my brothers, that we all have this place of, it's not race, it's culture, you know, and because my culture is like European and African and Asian and like, there's this pocket that I have of being able to see the world very differently and step in different, you know, different pockets. But healing, it is at the core. No, feeling is at the core of healing for men.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that is hard to have first with any men, because you have to take them to a place to feel so they can be like, oh my God, like I'm just feeling something right now, you know, like I haven't felt. And then can I release it? And then now I'm like, okay, so now I can actually, you know, go. I don't know if you guys are hearing or not. I'm home with like all 6 kids, and I have 4 boys and 2 girls. And I hear on my side just like there's some fighting. My wife would probably be here like too much noise. Me just
We're
like
hearing it a little bit, but it's in the background.
War raging.
Like, you better be quiet.
Yeah, it's
podcast.
part. You know, I tell my wife, I'm like, listen, you have to understand this thing with men and boys. There's the level of aggression that is necessary in order for them to grow and develop.
Right.
You know, like, and only a dad can understand that. Like, a mom would be like, "Don't be aggressive, don't fight, don't wrestle," and you look back at before it was just like rite of passage.
No, often I have a higher tolerance for the boys roughhousing than she does. As long as they don't like break something, break the house, or break each other, like, we're good. You know, and try to win, but don't necessarily try to inflict harm.
Yes, not out of anger.
There's a line there.
Yes, it's the thing of like not out of anger that like I'm trying to for some of them to get, you know, but also understand it's just like there's a place of release that is required. Because if you start to get to the place of like, I don't allow you to release, then now what am I doing? Like I'm just like coaching or teaching a young man that you should never release the feelings that you have inside. Whether it's anger, crying, and now we're doing the same thing that we did, which is like, I can't feel, I cannot do this. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm finishing. You want to say hi to Mr. Matt? Okay.
Hey.
Okay, you guys go play. I'm almost done. Love you. The beautiful one of Father.
So Julian, a couple of things here too. Like even for me, like, you know, I trained a lot in the martial arts growing up, and that was another outlet because I had all these sisters, right? So I was not supposed to like fight them. So they gave me the opportunity to like, okay, go train over here. And then even in the last couple of years, I got back in training the martial arts, doing jujitsu. As far as like guys go, it's like you get to kind of work out some of that stuff in a semi-controlled environment, and you are trying to like, you know, break arms and choke each other. So it's kind of really good for male bonding. It's painful even when you're not getting injured. It's still painful. And then coming back around to the healing thing and creating the space. And I know, you know, you have a heart for setting an example for dads of different ways of doing life. And when I began to be able to feel and really pursue my wife at the next level and hearing from God in how I'm living, what that opened up for us at the home front is it actually led to my wife taking down that wall that was inside her that was holding some of herself back from being fully like vulnerable and all in on me. Because when I said, hey, I'm all in on you, then the question was like, oh. And I was like, I want to see all of you. And she's like, well, what if there's parts of me that, you know, you see and you don't like, you know, if you keep digging deeper. And I'm like, I want to, some people explore space, some go to the depths of the ocean, but I want to explore you. Like, let's do this, because there's like, and in doing that, what's really interesting, you learn so much about yourself in the marriage relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so I heard this one guy say, you learn like 90% more about you than is possible except in relationship with another, especially that's an intimate, close relationship. So the things that begin to happen is, one, this actually removed like not physical, but like sexual blocks that had kept us from having like the best like
Intimacy,
intimate sexual emotional experience. And then when you're all in, it feels different. And sometimes we just like hold each other, like even like fully clothed, just like hold her like for an hour and just like feeling her breathe and just like being each other's presence. And it's almost like a spiritual, physical interplay that happens there, deep emotion. And so the sex life went to the next level. And so my wife is a beautiful woman. She walks around like a fitness competitor, but yet sometimes the women like that also, they know all their flaws. Then they pick at themselves and they beat themselves up mentally. Guys, like, you can have a dude with a dad bod, sucks it in looking in the mirror. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty jacked, right? You could have a supermodel woman and she'll be like, but, when I twist this way, there's a dimple in my leg, so I'm not perfect. What's the point? And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're stopping traffic. Everyone's like wanting your number. Like does not that mean anything? But it's like, no, that doesn't mean anything. Because when I look in the mirror, I don't see it.
Yeah.
And what happened though is by going to the next level, she came out one day and she's like, I looked in the mirror today and I saw that I was beautiful.
Yeah.
I actually feel beautiful. And I was like, all my words were not enough. Words of thousands of others, not enough. But because of the space that I had created for her to feel my love at a deeper level, she realized the depth and the truth of the words that I was sharing with her. Then what happens is, now I'm leading differently in the house because I'm talking about God. We're praying together as a family and I'm walking and living it out. It's not just me like, here's some Bible stuff. Do good. Here's the rules. No, it's like, dude, Dad's crying. Dad's talking to God every morning. Dad's making different decisions. Like, what's happening? My older son was addicted to video games and chat rooms and like weird stuff in there. It was showing up and he's like in middle school and he's like acting weird and making sounds and it's like, ugh. My wife is like, there's something wrong with him. This is like demonic. Like this is dark. I feel like this cold energy. And I'm like, I don't feel anything. And she's like way more sensitive. Like, he's all right, And she's just like, no, this is not right. But seeing me like living differently and he really identifies with me. And what he identified before is like he always saw me as super smart. I want to be smart like Dad. I'm smart like Dad.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I want to know God like Dad. And so we got to this place where we were going to take a family trip to the Bahamas and he was not going to go because my wife was like, there's no way we're taking him. I do not want to be around him. A couple weeks before that, seeing how I was living differently, talking to God and living out differently and living more from a place of love and leadership, just in not even like how I'm projecting. It's just emanating out from me and everything. He goes for a walk and basically just looked up to the sky and said, Jesus, help me. Like, I want to be able to talk to you like my dad does. And he got this vision of a heart that had rocks around it. And a key comes in and undoes the lock. The rocks fall off the heart. And then he saw like the rays of sun coming down through the clouds. And he was released in that moment. Personality change, eye color, kind of like lightened again, just like comes back in the room, super helpful. And later that day, my wife's like, did you have an encounter with God earlier today? He's like, yeah, I went out and prayed. And this is the vision that I saw. And he has been a changed kid since that moment. Then something else had happened. We were praying as a family the next day for that. And God told my wife and gave her a vision of our other son who had been praying for his older brother for 2 years. And just saying how much his prayers is what God was honoring and helping set his brother free.
Yeah.
When she said that, he's standing next to me, I'm holding his hand. He starts to sob. He's just crying, right? And I'm like, man, this is precious, right? Just like seeing your boys, like, oh, he's praying for him and he's seeing him like coming out of that darkness and like the joy returning to his life. And that's his brother. And, and he's probably thinking he's going to beat me less. So this is good, right? He's just praying. So fast forward, my wife does a little live and she's like, let's talk about the changes that we're seeing in Dad. And so my older one talked about how, I saw Dad listening to God. The younger one was, well, I realized that men could cry because I saw my dad cry. I never cried before in his presence because I didn't want him to think that I was weak.
Mm.
So fast forward, now we're in the Bahamas. My wife has been set free. Our sexual connection's through the roof. Like, my boys are having a lot of fun. And my wife turns to me and says, this is because you changed. And I was like, and then I start crying because it's like the overflow of joy in my soul just could not be contained in my body anymore because of what God had done in changing me and how that changed our entire family. And so there's something powerful when a man goes all in on God, pursues his wife, and began to actually act as the spiritual leader in the house. Not just like say, respect me, but literally earns the respect through how he lives and conducts himself. And our family is transformed, and this is literally in the last few months. And it was good before. It wasn't like broken, crazy dysfunctional. It was actually like, it was fine. It was normal. But the level that we've gone to is almost unimaginable. I'm telling you all of this, and it sounds like I'm recounting someone else's life, just telling you this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole, inside the movement that I'm leading, called The Dad That Made the Legend, the whole purpose of it is just like for you to be able to become a legend instead of your lineage. Like, it's like you literally at this moment, like there are people that came before you, your dad, your grandparents, all that kind of stuff. And then down the line, like you are it.
Yeah.
You are it. Down the line, they're going to reference this.
Yeah. So here's how I used to think. I used to think like, I'm going to live my nice little good private life.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I'll get my money. I'll dial it in. I'll work hard. I will and then, take care of stuff while I'm alive. And then when I die, it's like, it's not on me anymore. That's your problem now. Like, so it's like,
my time.
Y'all can deal with whatever's left. And so it gave me permission to play small and to be like, hey, maybe God gave me more capabilities and skills and gifts, but I got myself and my close family taken care of.
Yeah.
Everyone else, take care of yourself. It's on you. And then what God challenged me was like, no, I'm calling you to lead a movement. No more private life. And I liked my private life. And then my wife's been speaking to me saying, hey, the work that you're doing as you're stepping into this season and what God is calling you to do will impact 7 generations.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're like, oh.
That is my message.
It doesn't end with my death.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can alter the trajectory of my life and then have moments of impact with other men, change the trajectory of their life, and that starts with my boys. If I can change the trajectory of their life, the compounding effect of that over multiple generations can be astronomical. So it doesn't end when I expire.
There's this place, I think it's a American Indian saying. They say you can heal 7 generations in the past and 7 generations in the future. And it's this place of like, whenever I told you this whole thing about feeling inferior, whenever I did the work, I understood that it didn't start with me. My great grandma got pregnant while, Europeans came to Africa, and she got pregnant by the master, and she got a little brown baby, and the brown, like, how did she feel? Like, it's encoded.
Yeah.
And she never, you're looking at just even like personal development, only started like what, in the 80s? in the 80s, it became a thing. So you think of all those men that just didn't really know like how to feel and didn't have any studies or any EQ wasn't a thing that was talked about. Like they just didn't have the tools to know like how do you actually start to feel your heart and know how to do this and this is okay and and showing up. And it's just like you are there now. We are there now as men leading instead of business, but also our family, and then also service to others to be able to say, because I have more knowledge, skills, resources, I'm actually going to pivot and we're going to not talk about it because in many, especially in even European cultures, it's like, hey, we Europeans are very good like this. Like they just don't want people to know how much money they have, what they do. It's just like, live hidden, live good. Nobody should know, what it is. Versus you get to a place of leading, and now you're exposing yourself and can be attacked by many. But just like when you shared, and I was able to come in, and other people were able to come in, is because once you decide to be public now, then others feel good to be able to come and release because they get the model, from you.
And so what that meant for me is, so for instance, this anger thing I mentioned early on, like in passing as if it was no big deal, I never once spoke of that before January of this year. I was ashamed that I used to get angry. And then when I mentioned it, it set me free, and everyone else was like, yeah, so what? I get angry every day. And you're like, here I was living in shame, holding myself back because someday I might get exposed for having been an angry guy.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's the biggest nothing burger I've ever heard. Like, yeah, cool. Like, let me tell you what I did yesterday. Like, okay, cool. Like, if you can live a life where you're not ashamed of exposure, of being like, hey, here's where I screwed up, here's where I am now, but you can also point to, and here's what God's doing in my life. And if you want the fruit of this, here's how you can do it. And it's like, you need to get out there and go. And you need to talk about this. And so I have exposed more of myself in the last 4 months than in the previous 40 years of my life. Just because
that's beautiful.
It's like, and I feel more free. I feel more alive. It was terrifying to consider. But like many things that you think are terrifying, when you do them, it's exhilarating. It's like out that roller coaster. I don't want to. Or you want to go down that slide. But when you do it, you're just like, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, and others have been waiting, right? Others have been waiting for that voice to come in. They just didn't know where that voice was coming from, and I think that's a powerful stuff. But I know we're coming to the end of our time together. It's been amazing. I think we definitely need to do a part 2 at some point down the journey. Nice. When you get your first book published and all of the above. I know that this episode is going to have ripples for men that somehow are still stuck in this place of just like feeling alone, feeling like they're just a wallet, feeling like everything is on them, and wanting to cry but don't want to feel the crying or being viewed as just like weak, and don't know who to trust because they feel like if I share, I might get used, in some type of way, right? I don't want to be cool. I don't want to be an object. I don't want to be irrelevant. So the intention with this episode is that to be able to get men to get breakthroughs, to be able to connect to my voice, Matt's voice, and if you need support, to reach out. So with that, Matt, one parting piece of guidance, and then how can people reach out to you if they're like, Matt is my dude? How do I connect with Matt? I might be in California or not, but I need to connect with Matt.
So I guess the parting piece of guidance is the thing I love about what I get to do now is as I come more alive and express more of the gifts, I feel it almost like light hitting a prism. And so like that's God flowing through me, and it expresses a certain color spectrum. But here's the thing, there's no scarcity in God's kingdom, because if I can wake other men up to living their best lives, it makes my world better. So it's not like it's taking away from me. And in fact, the more people that I can wake up to living this way where they're fully alive, the better off that I am, and the better off that they are. And the ripple effect of that is massive. And so for me, this is what I feel called to do for the rest of my life, because it's so exciting, so exhilarating. And if I can wake men up to who they're called to be and have that relationship with God whether they know with certainty they're hearing his voice and living it out, it's a game changer. It's game over at that point. So I'm on Instagram, Matt Wilson 2.0. It's probably one of the easiest ways to find me. And then I'll have a website one of these days. I'm a full-time coach now. I don't even have a website, all the other artifacts yet. They're coming. The books are coming, all that good stuff. But right now, God is just working with me as I'm coaching men and CEOs how to come fully alive in every part of life. And then from that, there's going to be an entire movement that's birthed. And the men that I'm called to reach and to wake up will be coming from that.
Beautiful. And give them the name of the coaching.
Yellow Brick Method. Yellow Brick Method is the name.
Yellow Brick Method.
Right. Brick
Matt,
by brick. Build the new you.
Yes, brick by brick. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Like I said, God's timing is perfect. And I know this was meant to be at the time that it was meant to be. And many men are going to connect with it and be released, man. So I appreciate you.
Julien, thanks for having me on. I love that we've been able to connect even from a distance and bond over the journey we're on, the similarity in our wives and how amazing they are for us. I love you, and I'm excited to be seeing where this journey takes us.